Thank you, Harsh. And I couldn't agree more. Of course, no pressure on my panel here. We have spent the day learning about journeys, exploring experimentation, learning some really amazing lessons to improve onboarding and optimize email discoverability. And now we're going to shift our focus. We're going to shift to frameworks that allow customers to focus efforts, grow retention, ultimately increase transactions. And we're also going to explore the fit for future of retail, which reveals 4 fundamental business objectives and a blueprint retailers can follow to transform customers into super fans. I'm your host, Peggy Salz, mobile analyst, tech consultant, senior Forbes writer, and the topic is how e-commerce pioneers are using CleverTap to ensure continued growth. And hey, as Harsh put it, we have a double dose of actionable insights and advice from my guests who have identical names. We'll sort that in a moment. But different perspectives, different very valuable perspectives from where they sit in the retail journey. So we have Abhishek Gupta, we'll call you AG, Senior Vice President, Growth at Mamaearth. And AG is a growth marketing professional with over 8 years of experience in building digital-first brands across a number of verticals, CPG, fintech, edtech, automotive categories as well. Throughout his career, he has built and led teams to grow businesses, harnessing various channels, as well as product excellence and data analytics. So everything put together to lead growth, which he does now at Mamaearth, a digital-first, toxin-free beauty and personal care brand that is pushing the boundaries. So I'm really excited to welcome you, AG.
Thank you, Peggy.
And we'll have Abhishek Gupta, and keep the full name, Chief Customer Officer at CleverTap. Abhishek leads customer success, technical account management, and support at CleverTap. He is passionate about customer delight and outcomes, and he is one of the key architects of the Fit for Future retail framework we discussed. He'll be diving into that shortly. Welcome, Abhishek. Great to have you.
Thank you, Peggy.
So AG, to kick it off, I guess congratulations are in order, right? You raised funding. The press puts you on the list of companies that have unicorn status, and the media reports you clocked 4x growth. That is impressive. Tell us about that journey.
I think we are the first unicorn of 2022, so that's really a good milestone to achieve. In terms of growth strategies, I think first and foremost thing we were able to clock was getting customers to repeat. So that was the first agenda. So like other brands, we were not very hostile to acquire as many customers as possible, moving our top line up. We were more in line towards let's make sure that we acquire the right customer. We make sure that let's make sure that the customer repeats. They really like the product. They really like the brand. So that's how we started, and that's how we set up the whole repeat framework. So one of the initial, since when we were acquiring at an aggressive pace, we made sure that we acquire the right customer.
So you have a very precise framework that you have built, and that is interesting because it's about framework. Abhishek, you are also looking at what needs to be analyzed, what needs to be done. This is an approach you cover in your framework. I'd just like to step back for a moment and talk about what went into building the framework and how marketers can get the most out of it, such as AG.
A Fit for the Future of Retail framework draws upon our experience of working with more than 100 customers across the world in different markets. And that was very, very important for us because one of the things that we realized is that not all businesses are the same, not all consumers are the same. So before we can put out a framework, we need to have a deep understanding of the business and of the markets and the needs of the consumers. And during this process, we spoke to a very large number of customers. We basically conducted workshops for them. We did interviews. We also looked at a large amount of data. As we did these workshops, as we spoke to more and more customers, we identified that our customers principally, and this is about the brands, they have 3 principal objectives. The first is increasing user retention. Second is increasing user engagement. And third is increasing revenue. And the framework that we have built allows brands to achieve all these 3 outcomes. But what this framework does, it provides a jump start. So if there is a new e-commerce company that integrates the CleverTap platform onto the stack, they can get a jump start right from the beginning. They don't have to really think through the use cases, what they can do, what they cannot do. They can easily go ahead and launch it. Like, so for example, we just spoke about Peggy and Abhishek spoke about this, right? The repeat purchase. So, When you think about something as simple as this, one of the insights that we got from the data that we looked at was only 8% of the customers are doing like a lot of repeat transactions, but they contribute over 40% of sales. Now, when we are thinking of these kind of important data points, it becomes very, very important for brands to be able to kind of understand these data points and go one level deep and be able to engage with these users, identify them, engage them, and then convert them. And so a framework basically takes a holistic look at this entire end user lifecycle.
I mean, we've heard from AG, and we'll hear more, that he has a strategy in place. But you, again, you've looked at what marketers are doing. Abhishek, what do you see are the most pressing challenges marketers face at a stage such as Abhishek, focused on increasing the repeat rate of customers?
Brands spend a whole lot of money in terms of acquiring users, and 77% of these users basically churn within the first 3 days on an average, and 90% of these users churn within 30 days. So if you think about it, unless brands are intentionally focused on retention rates, the cost of acquiring these customers is going to be tremendously high. And so this is one of the biggest challenges that marketers face. And this is not just for the new customers, but even for existing customers. You need to engage and retain the users. In the post-pandemic world, or maybe we are right now still in the pandemic phase, but what we have seen during the first 3 months of the pandemic, the number of the e-commerce customers went up, or the number of users who were shopping on the e-commerce portals went up sharply. 84% of the total users, total buyers, they basically shopped online. This was almost like a 10-year worth of growth that was achieved in just 90 days. So when I think about this, you have an opportunity, you have a challenge. And in both cases, the need of the hour is to understand the evolving consumer behavior and address it across the life cycle of the customer, as Abhishek said, as AG said, in a very holistic manner.
So AG, you looked at the journey and you looked at the events, even pre-indicator events of events that would say this person is going to be highly likely to repeat purchase. Let's focus on that person. But of course, you never hit it right on the first time. I know you're an amazing company and you're a unicorn, but it's trial and error. Can you tell us a little bit about how you approached narrowing down the events and validating your hypothesis for this?
Got it. So we have built a framework around, we have three type of events. First is the pre-purchase events, when the customer is visiting the website and what sort of activities they are doing, how many times they are coming to the website for purchasing a particular product, or from what channel they are coming from. Second is what sort of things they have purchased, what sort of discount they have used, what sort of pin code they are coming from, or maybe the other details which are available during the purchase cycle. And lastly is the post purchase, and what sort of delivery time we are taking. And we have seen that if we take a higher delivery time, depending on particular pin code to pin code, for tier 1, if we take a high delivery time, then the customer generally penalizes us and not come in a repeat cycle. So we have divided the all the events in these three frameworks, and there are a lot of segmentation which we generally do based on the demography of the customer, based on the channel which they are coming for. And then we, as a team, as a business team, as a data team, tech team, we sit together, we build a lot of hypotheses. So it's more of a brainstorming that, okay, prepaid order has a high probability to convert if a customer has placed a prepaid order. If a customer has purchased our bestseller like onion oil, onion shampoo, the probability of conversion is higher. If a customer has purchased a serum across one face category, then the probability of converting it to a hair category is higher. So we build all these hypotheses on a quarterly level. Based on this hypothesis, some of the data is readily available from the data source systems we have, like CleverTap, our in-house data source systems. We verify the data, okay, whether this hypothesis is validating or not. And based on these validations, we build the next set of hypotheses. So suppose if a prepaid order has a high conversion rate, let's give some extra discount for a customer to convert on a prepaid order, and let's see if the repeat rate continues to a cycle or not. Secondly, we are using the uplift to measure all these hypotheses, testing them, and then making sure that the results are significant.
That's very valuable also in finding the cohort. But the prize is to be able to predict behavior. How far are you along in this direction, AG?
We have built another framework called LTV to CAC ratio type of a thing. So, which a channel might be giving a high LTV to me, let's spend some extra bucks on that channel. Or maybe if a customer is acquired from a particular channel, I know that that customer has a high propensity to convert in the future and give me a high LTV. So, I will spend extra bucks maybe to convert it again. And that's how the model we have built. Secondly, you need to find some correlations in how a customer behaves. So we have one correlation that if a customer places a second order in next 2 months, the probability of customer being a loyal customer in next 12 months will increase by around 40%. So that's how our second nudge is. Let's make sure that customer is placing the second order in next 2 months. So that's how the whole framework is built. And we have used the predictive analytics as well as the whole data modeling technique in house so that we are able to get maximum out of these cohorts and making sure that our LTV is maximized as much as possible.
Abhishek, this is a great way to get back to your framework because he's talking about building a journey, but also the communication, when and how to deliver the nudges, the triggers that grow transaction and retention. What is some of the best practice that you have observed?
One of the most important things that we are seeing is that customers, actually the brands, they have to stay true to the philosophy of serving the customers. The brands basically need to have a deep, obsessive, customer-centric approach. Now, Abhishek spoke about the data points. Now, what is important is for you to collect the right set of data points in the beginning, like through the customer journey. Because what your customers are saying is, you can only serve me when you know me. So know me to serve me. And the data points fundamentally are the ways for a brand to know who the consumers are. Now, the second aspect is about how do you serve them? And what is principally important in this case is serving these customers with the right content in the right context on the right channel. So, for example, when we talk about right channel, a lot of times brands are thinking about, okay, I want to engage user on this channel. It isn't about that. It is about the channel on which a user is present. You engage the user on the channel in which they are present. You don't bring user onto a channel that you like. And that's an important aspect that we have seen brands doing it. We've also seen brands basically making sure that they're engaging with the users in their context. The content also plays a very important role. So, for example, like the ability to do testing, Abhishek spoke about the tests they run and the optimization that you have to do. Now, ability to do all of this at scale is very, very important. You want to be able to run as many experiments as possible in as short as time as possible. And then if those experiments are successful, you want to be able to scale rapidly.
So you mentioned it, and I have to follow up on it because AG, you are a growth marketer. And that means also scale. And that is a challenge, also an opportunity if you take a data-driven approach, as Abhishek pointed out. Tell me a little bit about how you are scaling after you have validated these events.
Initially, our whole CRM strategy started with more of a manual sending communication to the customer, testing on a manual basis, and then we started seeing that there is some pattern how we approach to the customers. So our framework then built on the personalization of how the customer is behaving on the website or the app. So if a customer has visited a particular pages or after he has dropped, if a customer has add to cart and then he has dropped, depending on the customer behavior, we started personalizing the whole journey. Our main aim was let's reduce the manual intervention, how we communicate to the customer. Let's do more of a personalized and the automation communication depending on what the customer is doing. If he's clicking on a particular SMS, clicking on a particular email or a push notification, based on that, let's send the another communication. If a customer is not looking at it, then the other strategy is in place. So our main thing was let's not bombard or increase the communication frequency to the customer or increase the type of communication you are sending. Personalize it and let's make sure that we actually reach out to the customers who are actually looking to buy a brand or interested in the brand. And second framework which we have built, let's not only ask customers to buy. The revenue is not the endpoint which might get you the final revenue. You need to engage the customers. Then we started getting with the engaging content onto the our app, like how to use, maybe what other people are talking about, maybe some of the interesting blogs, etc. So we started posting on that app. Now what we are seeing that quite a lot of customers said started coming onto the app on a daily basis, looking onto those content, reading this, maybe subscribing directly. Okay, I want a push notification subscription that I get the notification as soon as you upload a new content. So that's how the whole framework was built. Initially we were pushing more, now we have utilized that. Let's personalize it. What the customer are looking for, let's do it more. It's more about personalization, and that's why we have built the whole framework by the CleverTap and the journeys via CleverTap.
There are marketing nightmares, and we want to understand how to avoid them. And one of them is that retail can sometimes resemble a bit of a zero-sum game. You want to encourage a certain action, say a repeat transaction, but you want to make certain also that the revenue is real and not just because maybe a customer canceled an order or they were offered a coupon and they would have done it anyway, right? These are problems that marketers always encounter. How have you solved for it, AG? How have you approached it? What can you share?
So first thing, after each and every journey, we started recording what sort of cancellations or what sort of customer activities have been done to get those uplift. So first is the to make sure that we are placing a right metrics in place. Second thing, what we have done is let's analyze the journey not in silos rather than a customer point of view. If a customer is entering maybe abandoned cart journey, where the customer might be lying in, and what the customer might be doing at that point of time, maybe exploring, maybe something else. So we started creating those exclusions and inclusion to the journey. What sort of people should be there into the journey, what sort of people should not be there into the journey, and that's how the whole systems are built currently. And similar framework we have implemented into our acquisition channels as well, for the remarketing, maybe from a Google or a Facebook, maybe for other platforms, that okay, we don't want to communicate to those customers at a customer level or a cohort level. We started fixing a type of offers or discount we might want to give. At a first stage of fine, this is X amount of discount, second point of time, X wide amount of discount. And that's how the whole framework was built. And maintaining those frameworks, we have started seeing that the overlap between journeys or between the channels have reduced a lot, since we were more thinking from a customer point of view or a customer journey cycle point of view rather than a particular journey. So the growth manager have a target of optimizing that customer life cycle rather than optimizing that customer journey.
Abhishek, I'd like to ask you the same question. What are you seeing that marketers struggle with, maybe also in the area of cross-sell? Because, of course, that is also a very difficult area indeed.
We have looked at various ways to kind of encourage cross-sell, and I'll give you a few examples. Sometimes brands think cross-sell is an afterthought. My first transaction is done. Now there is a second transaction that needs to occur, and I need to do an activity in between. What we have seen is brands actually utilizing the first transaction as a point of entry into the second one, like by utilizing a native display capability. If you are able to present something which is very pertinent for the user, and we have, by the way, artificial intelligence model that allow brands to do some of those things, they're able to share with the user a product which is complementary or relevant to the category that the user is purchasing from. Now, what it does, it sets a trigger in the mind of the user. That the trigger may or may not be activated immediately, but the trigger is set, and the brand at some point can activate the trigger to basically take user to the second purchase. And what AG mentioned about, if you take a user to the second purchase, then you'll increase the loyalty by 40%. Now, that's a massive shift. And we have seen a number of brands actually talk about that. What you've also seen is brands are now leaning more and more on machine learning capabilities, because frankly, the fact is the number of data points that we are capturing for every user is huge. And we can segment users based on certain criteria. But what we're seeing is, for example, things like intent-based segmentation. It's a very, very interesting way to kind of upsell and cross-sell to a user, because after a user has made a transaction, if you want to see the propensity to buy a second product, the intent-based segmentation allows brand to see which users are most likely to buy, which users are moderately likely to buy, and which users are least likely to buy. Now, historically, what has happened is brands have approached engagement with these customers in a uniform manner, which is like everyone would have received the same notification. But now suddenly there is a very different very innovative way of engaging it. So users who are most likely to buy, you can directly engage with them in a transaction related engagement. But users who are least likely to buy, they're not ready to buy immediately. So you need to nurture them. And AG gave an example in terms of like nurturing users, like educational content, for example, is a very powerful tool to build those deep, long relationships and eventually take consumer to the eventual path of buying a product.
We've had a deeper understanding of how to activate, motivate customers to move them deeper in the funnel. I want to thank you both, AG and Abhishek, for sharing your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Peggy. Thank you, Abhishek.
And now we will hear more about new and upcoming integrations that enrich the customer journey. So over to you, Rahim.